So you just bought your first TIG machine. Let me start by saying congratulations and welcome to the wonderful world of TIG welding. Now here you're going to find challenges, rewards, excitement, and most of all, frustrations. Now nothing about TIG welding is easy in the beginning, but I'm here to try and make it a little bit simpler than it seems to be, especially if you have already picked up a torch and started stacking with less than spectacular results. So let's start this off by breaking it down to what you're looking at and what you need to get going in the right direction. Now most welding machines will include a typical list of accessories and consumables, and most of them ship out with it, some of them do not. But that's what you're going to find out when you get into the actual description when it goes to purchasing your welding machine. Now we'll have a totally different video about how to do that, but just in case you're watching this one, just know that you should understand and put into your budget the things that you are actually missing or what is not included. So in the description, be really careful about what you're reading. You need to know things like, does it include the TIG torch? In this case with AHP, absolutely includes a TIG torch. It includes the ground lead. That's something you're going to need to have on that one. It also includes a stinger because virtually every TIG welder is a stick welder or every stick welder is a TIG welder. These are all things that are very important to have. You may not need the stinger, but if it comes with the stinger and works as a TIG welder but doesn't include the torch, you'll need to buy a torch or you'll need to source one. This one also includes a pedal. Some machines do, some machines don't. And additionally, we have consumables for our TIG torch, which is really nice. Some of them include tungsten. This one does not. And we also have an argon flow meter. Now the flow meter connects obviously to the cylinder, which does not come with the actual welding machine. So we're going to have to source that one out. This one also has a hose that goes in from the flow meter to the back of the machine. If you didn't have one of those, you need to source all that out. So to make a little bit simpler out of this, or kind of really understand what you need to get, here's a quick checklist of the things that you're going to need when you purchase your machine. Because once you purchase it, if your entire budget was the price of the machine itself, you're going to be sitting there for a long time waiting to get more money to buy the rest of the things needed to actually start welding. So let's go over that list. Now first you're going to need a TIG machine. Now any brand or preference that you have, as long as it has the features that you're looking for and fits in your budget. I personally like the AHP Alpha TIG series. It's definitely worth the price and it has withstood the test of time here at the shop. Next you'll need a TIG torch. Now usually they're included with the machine on most machines, but if you have to go out and source one, I usually suggest starting with a good brand such as CK Worldwide or similar. Now they are all pretty much sized in a universal family, and if you need to know more about torches, we got a dedicated video specifically for that, but a good number 17 torch is a fine place to start. Just make sure you get one that matches your machine requirements and hookups. Next, you'll definitely need a ground or an earth lead, depending on which way you want to call it. Now, these are typically included with every machine, but at the same time, if it's not, it isn't difficult to source one. You just need to make sure that one matches your machine. Now, most of these have a DINS 3550 connector on them, and that's pretty much all you need. So, a TIG torch definitely needs its consumables. Now this sounds like a no-brainer, but these aren't always included. Now if they are not included, you have a few options, but I typically suggest buying standard consumables with only a couple of exceptions. We'll get into this later, but consumables are things like the collet body, the cups, the collets themselves, the back caps. Now we're going to get more in depth into this, of course, but in the beginning, just remember, you need consumables. Tungsten is a necessity. You cannot TIG weld without tungsten. Now in the beginning, don't worry about the color. Unless you have like an old school transformer machine or whatever, don't worry about the whole buy this color for that and all the rest. Forget about that. We'll get into that later and all the rest of that good stuff. But for right now, buy an entire pack of tungsten. That would be a pack of 10. The color, irrelevant. Pick your color. I like purple. Some people like blue. Some people like gray. I use purple to weld everything with and it lasts quite a long time. So in the beginning, just buy a full pack of tungsten because you're going to be burning through a lot of it when you start TIG welding. Next, you're going to need a good flow meter and a hose. The hose connects the flow meter to the machine. Now, these are all appropriately sized. Sometimes you find ones that are in metric. Sometimes you find them in standard, whatever the case is. There's adapters, there's converters, there's everything you need to get all these hooked up. Sometimes you have to make your own hose. Sometimes one is included, as well as the actual flow meter itself. So when you buy a flow meter, if it is not included, you need to make sure that you get an argon flow meter. Finally, we need some shielding gas. Now, once upon a time, this was called the Heli-Arc process because we used helium as our shielding gas. Over the course of time, it switched over to using an inert gas, as in tungsten inert gas. That's what spells TIG. The inert gas we used or switched to is 100% argon. That is what you need in order to weld. That is what you need in the beginning. Don't worry about mixes like argon, helium, or anything like that. And just in case you're curious, you cannot use argon CO2 or any other kind of special mix like that you would with MIG welding. Use 100% argon, and that's it. Anything else comes with experience when you actually get to that point. But in the beginning, and for pretty much like 99% of all of your welding, 100% argon is all you need. And speaking of argon cylinders, you have many choices to choose from. Everything from about 20 or 30 cubic feet all the way up to 300 plus cubic feet of argon. These are your cylinder sizes. And in the beginning, it's kind of difficult to decide which one you need or anything like that, but just, you know what, take my word for it. The average size of argon cylinder that will last you quite a while through TIG welding but not be overkill or underkill is 125 cubic feet. This is kind of an average size cylinder that will last you quite some time. So at the end of the day, 125 cubic feet is kind of a good price tag, and it also lasts a decent amount of time without being too little or too much. Now, at a bare minimum, this is what you need to make your machine run, or at least to make it weld. Now, you notice I left out the foot pedal. Now, the foot pedal is not mandatory in order to make a machine work. The setup here is like for scratch start and lift TIG and stuff like that, and in many industries, no foot pedals are used. But if you have a foot pedal, or it includes a foot pedal, or your machine is capable of running a foot pedal, you'll definitely want one. Now let's move on to some assembly. Now, all of your welding, or at least 99% of it, is going to be done in the electrode negative orientation, meaning connect the ground lead on the machine side to the positive side and the clamp to the table nearest to your work piece that you're going to be welding. Then connect the electrode or the torch to the negative side. Then connect your gas line. Now, this will work for all of your TIG welding needs in both AC and DC. Do not switch it for any other reason because you're not going to need electrode positive. Now, if your machine has a pedal or a switch or anything like that, obviously there's usually a spot on the front to install that, so that's the time where you want to plug it in. We're going to use the pedal on this one. Now, look carefully at the end of this argon flow meter. That is a tapered fitting that goes into the cylinder valve. This is a dry fit. Do not add any kind of sealer, pipe tape, pipe dope, or any kind of thread sealer to this fitting. Simply install it dry, snug it down with a wrench. The exact same goes for the actual line itself, or the gas line that goes into the outlet of the regulator there. This is also a dry fit. They are tapered to interference with each other and actually seal by themselves. Just need to get it snug with a wrench, and that's it. The exact same goes for the fitting into the back of the machine or to your inlet port for the gas of the machine. Just simply snug it down. That's all you need. No tape, no sealers. Now, we're going to get into assembling the torch real quick, and we're just going to breeze right through this. The reason why is we have a dedicated video specifically for installing or setting up torches and the proper way to do it and all the rest of that good stuff. So we're just going to blast right through this, but get your torch assembled, get your tungsten in there, sticking out where you're ready to go, and this machine is ready to weld. Alright, now that's out of the way, let's talk about some gear. Now, one of the first things that you're going to need, obviously, in order to see your welds and protect your eyes and make you not go blind, is a welding helmet. Now, there are many out there to choose from, and there are generally two different styles. The passive lens, which means it's always dark, it doesn't have any electronic features or functions, it's literally just a lens that goes in front of your face. That is a passive lens. Some people call it the old school, and there is auto darkening. Now, the auto darkening is literally in its name, meaning that when you are not welding, you can see right through it like normal day. Well, pretty close, but when you start welding, it automatically darkens out, and you have different shades and different numbers and levels and stuff like that to adjust it to. Now, usually you'll see a knob or a switch or something on there that actually controls how dark you want it to get. Even really nice ones like my Optrel Crystal 2.0, that thing will do it automatically and adjust its levels accordingly. But when you first get one, start with it somewhere between 10 and 11. That's a good place to start. You can generally see everything, and I usually don't recommend going too much lighter for all of your general welding, at least. Now, let me just tell you flat out, there are some cheap hoods out there. There are some expensive hoods out there. The minute that you go cheap is the minute you don't see again. Don't risk it. If the hood costs like 50 to 100 bucks, it's a piece of junk. There's a handful of them that we no longer allow in the classes here at TFS because they have caused severe flash burn on the people that have used them. We don't even let them use them anymore. So, invest in a good welding hood. If you can't afford a good auto darkening welding hood, buy a $40 or $50 passive lens and get used to it. That's way safer than saving money on an auto dark because you want to feel cool, but you know what, you can't weld if you're blind, so consider that. Now let's talk about protecting everything else that isn't your eyes. Let's talk about things like your hair, protecting your hair. You might want a good welding cap. My personal favorite, Doug's welding caps, if you can get one. They're worth every single penny, but this is usually generally reserved for things that are throwing sparks. So if you're MIG welding, if you're stick welding, if you're flux cord, wire feeding, anything that has slag sparks that would catch your hair on fire, it's a good idea to protect your head. That would be a good welding cap. Second thing you're going to want is some gloves. Now you're playing with metal that is several thousand degrees in temperature. I mean, that's hot, and your hands, your fingers are literally just inches away from being burned up, you know, so you need some gloves. Now, with TIG welding, it's a little bit different. You got to have TIG welding gloves. The reason why is because if you put these big old fat meat eaters right here on, these are for like MIG and stick welding. They're very thick, a different kind of hide. They're generally, you don't have a whole lot of dexterity in them, so trying to expect to feed a filler rod or be able to manipulate and move extremely well with a big set of MIG welding gloves, it's not going to happen. So get yourself a good set of TIG welding gloves. These are generally thinner and they conform a little bit better to your hand and allow you to maintain a much better dexterity and feel for the machines, the welders, the torch, all the rest of that good stuff. You need that feel when it comes to welding. You got to have it because otherwise you're not going to be able to manipulate the torch, move it, or anything like that like you actually need to do. So it's a good idea to get some good TIG welding gloves. Now, I really don't know too many of them that are bad, other than the ones that have like polyester and stuff like that, or anything that melts in them. You're going to want to stick with leather or maybe some space age new materials or something like that that are good for that won't melt or, you know, burn your hands off or anything while you're doing it. The next thing is protect your arms. Yes, I have been called out from this many times over that I have not been protecting my arms or the rest of my skin. Some people get really sunburned or flash burned or arc burned on their skin extremely easy. Then there's the weirdos like me that don't. And of course, like I said, I've been guilty of this before. But theoretically, there is no excuse to not have welding protection over your arms. This could be anything from like a $30 to $40 welding jacket that is flame retardant material, all the way down to a $7 set of greenies. These are welding sleeves. They literally just slide over your arms. Not the most comfortable thing in the world, but they do the job. So definitely protect your skin. There's not really a reason not to. Now, moving along.
Now this is where it gets a little confusing, especially if you've already picked up a torch and started stacking. Which filler rod do you use? What size? What grade? What type? All the rest of that good stuff. Well, here's the deal. In the beginning, when you're first starting to stack, you're going to see a lot of mixed results, and it's mostly based on you not knowing what or how to do it, so you need a lot of practice. Now, the simplest thing that I could ever tell anybody, 1/16 or 1.6 millimeter. That is all the diameter of any size filler rod you ever need. The reason why is because you can always add more to your weld pool or your bead to make it larger, but you can't always add less from a larger rod. It's going to screw you up. So 1/16 in the very beginning is exactly the size you need of every filler wire. When you progress, when you get better, you'll find a need naturally for the other sizes, and you'll naturally gravitate toward them. Now when it comes to aluminum, ER4043, this is the best stuff you can get. It welds everything from 6 series aluminum like 6061 to 3 series aluminum like 3/003. It also welds cast aluminum. Now there is a popular vote for many different flavors and types. Ones that get shiny, ones that get wetter, forget it. You're not going to know the difference. You don't need to know the difference. In the beginning, when you're just stacking some stuff up, ER4043 is the best stuff you can get. It's also available at just about every single local welding supply store, and it's plentiful. When it comes to steel, you're going to find two types of people in this world. Those who like ER70S-2 and those who like ER70S-6. ER70S-2 is a little bit gooey. ER70S-6 is usually defined as a little bit runny. It doesn't matter which one you want to use. In fact, I usually say pick a tube of both. Whichever one you feel most comfortable with is the one you should use. That's the one you'll go with. So in the beginning, just buy a pound tube of each one of them. Then figure it out from there. you're probably not going to see a real big difference if you've never done this before. Now on to some stainless steel. The most popular grade of stainless that people are welding is 304 stainless steel. Now when it comes to welding 304 stainless steel, you need ER 308 or 308L. You'll see both of these. Don't worry about the L. Whether you have the L or not the L, don't worry about it when you're just starting out. 304 stainless steel is the most popular variety and it's welded with 308. 1/16 inch filler will get you pretty far. Now if you're welding some thinner stainless like 16th or 065, you might want to step it down to 045 filler wire or 1.1 millimeter. The reason why is we use a little bit less amperage when it comes to stainless. Not a whole lot less, but a little bit less. We have a video dedicated to working with stainless steel so you can understand that one. But at the end of the day, ER 308 will get you very far.
Now, a couple more things to seal this one off here. You're going to find a lot of information out there in public groups and stuff like that when you start asking for help. Very rarely are you going to find the answer that you just need to practice more or you need more torch time. The reason why? Because everybody has a solution. The problem is many times these are like things that will mask the results or skew the results in favor of making a weld look pretty as opposed to a structural sound weld that looks good. Now, don't worry too much about reaching out to groups and stuff like that. In the beginning, you just need to focus on some very, very simple things and eliminate a lot of variables. Tungsten is one of those variables. Let me tell you flat out, it makes absolutely no difference what color you go with unless you have a transformer machine. I personally don't have a transformer machine, but once upon a time when a machine would only spit out 60 hertz at 50-50 balance, green tungsten for aluminum mattered, and usually you would use red tungsten for everything else, or maybe even blue. That was before there were a lot of different mixes. But right now, all you need to know is if you have an inverter machine, pick a color. It doesn't really matter. Now for diameter of tungsten, 3/32 all the way. That's also 2.4 millimeter. Any tungsten will weld any size as long as it's big going to small. You can take any large diameter tungsten and weld thick stuff to thin stuff. You cannot take small diameter tungsten and weld thick stuff with it because it pretty much just melts and blows away. You really exceed what the tungsten can do. So a good general size, 3/32 will weld everything from about 1/4 inch or 6 millimeter, maybe a little bit more, all the way down to razor blades. Literally, you can sharpen a 3/32 to do everything. So don't worry about having some 040 there or 045 or 3/32 and 1/8 and 16th. And forget about that. Just get 3/32, pick a color. Again, I like purple. If you have an old transformer, you're going to want the green and the maybe something else for the DC side of things. Finally, let's move on to cups. Now, I mentioned earlier that the cup size, I usually recommend running standard consumables. These are things that are not gas lenses. These are things that are not gigantic cups, stuff like that. The reason why is most of the time you see consumables like gas lenses or big cups and stuff like that, like the Furic cups and the Fupas, BBWs, moose knuckles, and everything else in between. You often see those skewing your results. So in the beginning, if you can't make a weld with this, you shouldn't really be making a weld with that, especially if that will skew your result. Because what this will do, the standard consumables or things that are not gas lenses and stuff like that, they will tell the tale. They will suggest or tell you flat out that you need to either increase your speed, tighten up your torch height, maybe dab a little faster, dab a little slower, you're cooking the metal, you're coming up too cold. The standard consumables do not hide that, and you can absolutely 100% make any weld on any metal correctly without using any kind of nice little fancy additional pieces and parts. But one thing I did say is if you are switching your torch down in a number 17 down to the stubby kit, it's a really good idea to get the one that has the gas lens built into it because that gas lens is the most popular. So that's what you're typically going to see. But use a smaller cup on it so that way it doesn't skew your results. Now running a gas lens is not necessarily a bad thing. You can use it, but once you start jumping up into giant cups thinking that the reason why you couldn't make that weld look right is because you didn't have a giant cup, well, that's where you kind of need to start over and run back to the beginning. Now this is just your very basic introductory of what do you need and what to look for and all the rest of that good stuff, and I really hope that it has helped you out. There's a lot of information out there, but it's really based on opinion. So if anything, this might be just a good standard for you to run off of. And of course, we've got more episodes about how to actually make your welds. You should definitely check that out. So in the description, the top comment, all the rest of that good stuff, and the video cards that have been popping up here, you're definitely going to want to check those ones out. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode, and I want to thank you guys for watching as always. If you need to get in contact with us, hit us up on the fabricationseries.com website, Instagram at the.fabricator, or facebook.com/thefabricatorseries. Now make sure you subscribe and ring that bell for notifications, because we got more episodes coming up that are going to definitely help you out. If you need more information on classes, drop a line. There's a million ways to get a hold of us. I'll see you guys on the next episode.